Hey guys, tonight we step into the soft twilight of a town that is just beginning to rest. The shops are closing their shutters, the taverns are clinking out their last mugs, and you are stepping forward into the role of the night watchman. It is not glamorous, it is not heroic. In fact, it is long, slow, and very possibly dull. You probably will not survive this story out of sheer boredom, but that is exactly the point. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you are at it, drop a comment below with your location and the local time where you are listening from. I love seeing the spread of night owls across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. The evening bells have just rung, vibrating through the air like a bronze sigh. You lift the lantern that hangs from your belt, feel the weight of the staff in your hand, and adjust the leather strap that keeps your cloak pulled tight against the chill. The town is small but proud, built on trade, with cobblestones that hold the memory of countless footsteps. During the day it thrums with voices, cartwheels, and haggling. But by this hour the streets surrender themselves to shadow. As you begin your watch, you know the rhythm. The circuit along the main streets, the check by the market stalls, the pause at the church doors, the long loop by the riverbank, and then back through the heart of the town. Your duty is not only to watch for thieves or fires, but also to reassure the townsfolk that their dreams are being guarded by steady footsteps outside. Historians still argue whether medieval watchmen were genuinely effective at preventing crime, or if their main role was simply to create the impression of order by being visible. Either way, your task is more symbolic than action-filled. The lantern throws a small bubble of light around you. The glow spills across uneven walls, catching the faded paint of shop signs. Symbols of fish, bread loaves, scissors, because most people cannot read, and pictures sell better than letters. A quirky fact, in some European towns, night watchmen were also responsible for shouting the hours out loud so people could keep track while they slept. Imagine that, being woken every 60 minutes by some fellow bawling, "It is now midnight, and all is well." You are grateful your town favors silence instead. The first streets you patrol are still faintly alive. A mother herds her children indoors, closing the door with a firm latch. A candle burns in a narrow window, revealing a man still bent over his workbench, chiseling wood even as the light fails. You hear the faint notes of a lute being plucked lazily from inside a tavern, its chords stretching and stumbling like someone too tired to bother with perfection. These whispers of life reassure you that you are not entirely alone, though soon enough all those sounds will fade. You settle into a steady pace. Cobblestones make their soft, familiar crunch under your boots. The staff taps rhythmically at your side, a metronome to your solitude. You round a corner where the alley narrows and the smell changes. Wood smoke thickens here, mingling with roasting onions that someone is preparing for tomorrow's stew. The town is small, and you know its smells as well as its faces. That is part of what makes you effective. You can tell when something is out of place. The watchman's shift is not without small risks. Fires are the most dreaded. A single spark in a hayloft could undo centuries of building in an hour. That is why you keep the lantern shielded, and why you glance repeatedly at chimneys, checking for suspicious smoke. Burglars are possible, though not frequent. The reality is that most thieves prefer the anonymity of busier cities, not a place where everyone knows each other by name. Still, you keep alert. There is a strange comfort in this role. You are unseen, yet you are the invisible spine holding the town upright. By day, you are ordinary, just another worker who blends into the market. But by night, you embody order itself. That sense of anonymity with importance is what many later writers romanticized about night watchmen, though the reality was often drudgery. Some even used their rounds as excuses to nap on benches or hide away in warm corners until dawn. Your lantern flickers as a gust brushes past. You adjust the wick, steadying the flame. That tiny gesture, preserving light in darkness, reminds you that every small act of vigilance matters. A quirky tidbit: in some old towns, watchmen also served as unofficial weather forecasters, reporting each morning based on what they observed through the night. Their predictions were usually no better than guesses, but people clung to them all the same. You cross into the square where the evening stalls have closed. Crates are stacked, tarps tied down. The faint odor of fish clings to the air, sharp and sour. Cats linger here, clever-eyed, waiting to sneak a scrap. The square feels different at night, less like a market and more like a silent theater stage waiting for actors. You, for now, are the only player. Your footsteps echo up the high walls of houses, bouncing strangely, like someone else is following you. You glance back. Of course, no one is there. But in this job, you learn quickly that your mind can become both ally and enemy. The rhythm of repetition, the emptiness of streets, can stir your imagination into shapes and stories. That is why you rely on the lantern's steady glow and the clock tower's tolling. They ground you in reality. As the bells fade, you take in the town's rooftops silhouetted against a deep violet sky. Stars prick through, cold and sharp. Somewhere far above, scholars map constellations and debate their meanings, whether they foretell weather, harvest, or the fates of kings. Down here, you simply notice that the stars are constant companions, indifferent but reliable. The night is long, but it is also shared with countless others who keep watch in different corners of the world. Already, you feel the weight of the hours pressing forward. The first stretch of patrol is easy, the town not yet fully asleep, your body still fresh, your senses sharp. But you know what lies ahead, the slowing of time, the endless loops, the temptations of distraction. For now, though the evening bells have set you firmly on your path, and your journey through the watchful hours has just begun. The cobblestones are damp tonight, holding the memory of a recent drizzle that has left a faint sheen across the town. Each of your steps makes a soft scrape, followed by the dull clunk of your staff against the stones. It is a rhythm that becomes almost hypnotic. You glance at the faint glow of the lantern and notice how it paints wet bricks with uneven glimmers. The town seems to breathe with you, each alley inhaling shadows, each square exhaling silence. You follow the familiar curve of the main street, lined with shops whose signs now creak faintly in the shifting night air. One bears a painted loaf of bread, its surface cracked like the real thing. Another displays a curling boot, the leather scuffed from years of weather. There is even a sign with a crudely drawn bear that does not quite look like a bear at all. The shopkeeper insists it is, and no one dares argue. That is the charm of this place. Imperfections are folded into memory. A dog barks at you from behind a fence, low and uncertain, more warning than threat. Its eyes catch the lantern light, glowing eerily for a moment before it turns away. The world of the night belongs to such creatures. Cats slip across rooftops, their tails balanced like tightrope walkers. Rats rustle in the shadows, bold enough to scurry close when they think you are not looking. You let them be, or concern is not for their thieving. They have their own economy, one of scraps and speed. The silence of the street allows you to notice small details that would be invisible during the day. A cracked tile on a roofline, a shutter hanging by a single hinge, a doorway that sags slightly to one side. These things are not dangers, but they are signals. You make a note in your mind. Reminders of the town's slow decay and the need for repairs that will likely wait until someone has no choice but to make them. Night watchmen were often called the memory of a town, noticing what others overlooked. Historians still argue whether records kept by watchmen were more accurate than the scribes inside the council halls. Some claim they were, for who else walked every street, every night, in silence, with nothing to do but see? You pause at an intersection where three narrow lanes meet. The lantern swings slightly as you stop, throwing light into each dark passage. One leads to the tavern, still noisy though the hour grows late. Another curves past a row of modest homes. The last winds down toward the river, its cobblestones slick and uneven. You choose the lane toward the homes. The tavern can wait. The river, too. This is where the heart of the town rests. Behind shutters, you hear faint sounds. A cough muffled by a blanket, a chair scraping against wood. The quiet hum of voices speaking low so as not to wake children. You wonder what stories live in those walls tonight. A farmer counting coins by candlelight, wondering if there will be enough to repair a broken plough. A young woman reading a letter by the glow of a tallow candle, lips moving silently over the words of a brother serving somewhere far away. An old couple settling into bed, grateful for another evening spent together. You will never know their names or their secrets, but you are the thread between them all, pacing past their windows as they dream. Your lantern draws moths, fluttering erratically into the glow, sometimes singeing their fragile wings against the flame. You brush them away gently, aware of the irony. Here you are, guarding lives from unseen dangers, and here are creatures undone by their own fascination with light. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. In some towns, watchmen were said to recite little verses about the hour, rhyming warnings about thieves or fires. a mixture of caution and entertainment. Imagine muttering poetry into the darkness, hoping someone half asleep behind a shutter hears and takes comfort. You are glad your duty does not involve forced rhyme. The road bends, and the sound of your own footsteps multiplies. You realize the echo has shifted. The houses here are taller, closer together, and the acoustics turn your solitary steps into a ghostly chorus. For a fleeting moment, you imagine others are walking with you. It is comforting, though you know it is only stone and air. Loneliness can do strange things to the mind. Some watchmen in old records claimed to hear voices calling them by name at night. Scholars dismiss these tales as fatigue or imagination, though some townsfolk believed the spirits of ancestors roamed alongside the living. Your staff taps more firmly here. The ground is uneven, patched with stones that sink slightly when pressed. You steady yourself and breathe in the scent of damp earth rising from gardens hidden behind walls. A faint perfume of herbs drifts on the air, thyme and rosemary perhaps, hanging from kitchen rafters to dry. Even at night, life insists on showing itself. Up ahead, a small window glows with stubborn candlelight. The shutters are cracked open, and a shadow moves inside. You slow your step, eyes narrowing. A merchant, perhaps, working late to tally accounts. Or perhaps a restless child refusing sleep. You watch only long enough to see the figure settle again before moving on. Part of your task is discretion. You are meant to be seen, not to pry. At the edge of the lane stands an iron water pump. You pause, resting a moment, and let your lantern swing wide across its handle. The iron gleams dully. You imagine the hands that will grip it at dawn, women filling buckets, children splashing one another before chores, old men leaning on it for gossip. The town depends on these small mechanisms, each one a lifeline disguised as an ordinary object. A memory stirs of hearing about another town, not far away, where the watchman himself was blamed for a fire. His lantern tipped in a stable, they said, and though no record remains, his name was cursed for generations. Historians still argue whether that tale is true, or whether it was a convenient scapegoat. What remains is the lesson. A watchman is trusted only so long as nothing goes wrong. A burden heavy and invisible, but one you shoulder without complaint. You resume your walk, and as you pass another narrow alley, the tavern's laughter finally reaches you. Shouts, the scrape of chairs, the dull thump of a mug falling. You sigh quietly. They will stumble home soon enough, weaving paths you will need to monitor. For now, you return to the square, lantern still burning, staff still tapping, and the night still stretching ahead of you. The night has deepened, though not yet into its heaviest hours. You find yourself moving through the quieter lanes now, where most windows have gone completely dark. Shutters are fastened, doors are bolted, and the air feels thick with the weight of families already lost in sleep. The lantern sways at your side, a slow arc of golden light that slides across walls and cobblestones. Every so often it catches a glimmer in the glass of a window, as though a single eye is watching you from behind the darkened panes. The silence here is almost total, yet not quite. Wooden beams creak softly as houses settle. Somewhere in the distance, a horse snorts and shuffles in its stall. You can hear the faint rustle of laundry on a line, left outside to dry, and now stirring with the whisper of the night wind. The smallest sounds seem magnified when there is nothing else to distract you. That is both the gift and the curse of being a night watchman. You reach a row of homes known for their crooked shapes, built hastily, one leaning into another. They give the impression of tired men holding each other upright. Your light falls across the rough plaster, and you notice the marks carved into door frames. Some are simple crosses, others little symbols meant to keep away misfortune. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. In many old towns, people scratched protective marks on their doors to guard against witches or plague spirits. Even if belief faded, the tradition remained, because old habits die harder than fear itself. The air here carries the scent of smoke, and something sharper perhaps, cabbage stewing on a fire left to simmer low overnight. Your stomach gives a faint reminder that the night will be long, and you will have nothing to eat until dawn. Night watchmen were often given small rations to keep them going, but not always. Some relied on taverns to sneak them leftovers, though others simply endured, chewing on bread that had gone hard by evening. You pause at the mouth of a narrow alley. It is the kind of place children would avoid even in daylight. A passage barely wide enough for two men to walk shoulder to shoulder. The lantern's light struggles to fill the space, leaving half of it swallowed in darkness. You step forward, letting your staff tap firmly, a signal as much to yourself as to anyone who might lurk there. The stones underfoot are slick, and a rat darts across your path, disappearing into a hole with a squeak of protest. The alley opens again into a wider square, and here you sense life behind the walls. You cannot see it, but you know it is there. A sudden burst of laughter, muffled by thick shutters, tells you a group is still awake. Perhaps celebrating, perhaps arguing. The sound fades quickly, leaving you with silence once more. These small reminders of unseen lives are what keep you anchored, preventing the solitude from sinking too deep. Your gaze drifts upward to the windows on the higher floors. In one, a faint glimmer of light remains. You slow, watching. The shadow of a woman moves across the curtain. She leans over a cradle, perhaps, or sets down a lamp. You do not linger. Long privacy is sacred at these hours, but you carry the image with you as proof that the town is not entirely asleep. The lantern hisses softly as the wick burns. You take a moment to adjust it, trimming away a bit of char to keep the flame steady. The smell of singed cloth mixes with the oil. This small ritual is comforting, a reminder that you are not powerless. With every adjustment, you reaffirm your role. You are not only pacing the town, you are its guardian flame. Historians still argue whether the job of watchman truly mattered in preventing crime or fires, but the symbolism of a moving light in the night was undeniable. People slept easier knowing you were out there. You continue, and soon you pass a shutter that is not fully closed. A sliver of light escapes, falling across the cobblestones. You hear faint voices, low and urgent. You cannot make out the words, but the tone is sharp. A disagreement, perhaps, one that the night has made heavier than it might be by day. You resist the urge to pause. It is not your place to interfere unless danger is clear. Still, the sound stays with you long after you have walked on. The church bell tolls faintly in the distance, marking another hour. Its sound rolls across the rooftops, deep and solemn. You count the strokes automatically, a habit drilled into you until it became second nature. The bell is both anchor and reminder. One more hour done, many more to go. There is comfort in that, though also a heavy awareness. The night stretches long. A small breeze stirs dust along the street, and you smell damp earth again. You realize you have reached the edge of the town gardens. Even at night, you can sense their presence, rows of soil stretching outward, resting until morning hands return to them. A dog barks once from a nearby yard, then grows quiet. The gardens have their own kind of silence, different from the crowded lanes. It feels broader, emptier, more exposed. You take your time walking past, letting the air settle in your lungs. The sky above is brighter with stars here, less blocked by roofs. You tilt your head back for a moment and simply look. The constellations are sharp, the Milky Way a faint smear across the heavens. Scholars once claimed that stars were holes in a great dark cloth stretched across the world. Others argued they were burning fires hung in the firmament. Even now, no one truly agrees on what meaning they carry. But to you, they are company. Silent, steady, patient company. Your staff scrapes against a stone that has come loose, and you nearly stumble. You chuckle softly at yourself, shaking your head. Imagine being the guardian of the town and tripping over a cobblestone. It would not be the most glorious tale. Still, these small hazards are reminders that the town itself is alive, shifting, decaying, and demanding attention. You return toward the center once more, lantern held high. The street curves back toward the market square, and though you have already passed here tonight, it feels subtly different. The air is cooler now, the shadows heavier. You notice a loose shutter banging faintly in the breeze, a rhythm out of step with your own. You secure it quickly with your staff, easing the noise. A small act, but one that matters. With the square behind you again, you press forward into another narrow lane. The night deepens further, and your watch continues, steady as the stars above. The tavern's door opens just as you approach, spilling a wedge of yellow light onto the cobblestones. A man staggers out, clutching his cloak tight with one hand, while the other still grips a mug that was likely meant to stay inside. His voice rises in a slurred song, uneven and wandering, bouncing off the walls as though trying to find its tune. You keep your distance, but your lantern glow catches his eye. He squints, wobbles, and mutters something about shadows watching him. With a laugh at his own joke, he shuffles toward home. You know this scene well. Taverns empty in stages. The first wave leaves early, with laughter still strong and pockets lighter. The second drifts out reluctantly, grumbling about closing time. The last, the stragglers, come when the candles inside are nearly spent, when even the innkeeper is ready for sleep. Some watchmen in other towns were known to escort drunkards home to keep them out of trouble, though more often they simply made sure the men did not collapse in the street. Historians still argue whether taverns were the heart of medieval towns or their greatest nuisance. Perhaps both were true. The sound of stools scraping across the tavern floor reaches you through the thick walls. You can almost picture the interior, warm with smoke and chatter, the air heavy with ale and roasted meat. It is the opposite of your world outside, where the cool night wraps you in solitude. For a moment you almost envy them, though you also know that in an hour their joy will be replaced by headaches and regrets. The night is longer than the merriment within it. A group emerges, 3 men with arms slung around each other. They laugh too loudly, their boots clattering against the stones as they lurch down the lane. You step aside to let them pass, your lantern lighting their way whether they notice or not. One glances at you, nods vaguely, and mumbles a thank you that might also be an insult. You let it pass. The watchman's role is not to argue with drunks. It is to endure. Once they disappear, the tavern grows quiet again. The door shuts, the light fades, and the lane returns to stillness. You wait a moment longer, listening. No more voices. The place is finally closing. You move on. The tavern at your back, and the silence feels heavier now that the noise has ended. The lane widens into a square where a small fountain trickles. By day it is lively, children playing, women gossiping as they fill pitchers, men resting with mugs in hand. At night it is simply a pool of dark water, its surface broken only by ripples from the falling stream. You lean on your staff, watching the lantern light dance on the water. There is something soothing about it, though you also know it can be deceptive. A quirky fact comes to mind. In some towns, watchmen were tasked with inspecting wells and fountains to ensure they had not been poisoned. It sounds dramatic, but in times of rivalry or plague, such fears were not uncommon. You continue your patrol, circling back toward the church that looms at the edge of the square. Its tall windows are black now, though by day they blaze with colored glass. The doors are closed, the heavy iron handles glinting faintly in your lantern's glow. You pause, as you always do, and let your gaze linger on the stone walls. The church holds centuries of whispered prayers, confessions, and sermons. At night it feels less like a house of worship and more like a sleeping giant. Its silence both comforting and intimidating. The air grows colder here, the stone radiating chill. You pull your cloak tighter, shifting the strap against your shoulder. The lantern flame bends in a draft that seems to come from nowhere, and you shield it with your hand until it steadies again. This is one of the trickiest parts of the watch protecting your light from sudden gusts. Without it, you would be swallowed by the dark. Historians still argue whether watchmen truly carried lanterns in all eras, or whether some relied only on the moon. What is certain is that the flame became a symbol of vigilance, its glow representing safety in the unknown. The sound startles you, though you quickly laugh at yourself. A single bird, nothing more. Yet, in the silence of night, even a flutter can feel like an omen. The far side of the church opens to another lane, narrower, quieter. Here the houses are smaller, belonging to those with fewer means. The roofs sag, the plaster is cracked, and the doors are patched with mismatched wood. Yet, even here, behind the poorest shutters, the rhythm of life continues. You hear a baby cry faintly, then fall silent as a lullaby hums through the air. You pause, listening just long enough to catch the tune before it fades. In moments like these, the watch feels less like duty and more like a privilege. You are witness to fragments of lives that no one else will ever notice. You step on, lantern swaying, the lane bending back toward familiar ground. The tavern noise has died completely now, replaced by a stillness so complete that you can hear your own breathing. The town is finally surrendering fully to the night, and you remain the single moving figure among its dreams. The church fades behind you as you walk into streets that grow narrower and darker. The air here feels different, as if the stones themselves have absorbed centuries of whispered secrets. The lantern sways gently at your side, casting light in fractured pieces across the uneven walls. Every step seems louder, your staff echoing in steady taps that linger in the silence long after the sound has gone. Ahead, the old churchyard stretches beside the building. Iron gates stand closed, but not locked. The hinges groan faintly as you test them, and you decide not to step inside. Your duty is the town, not the resting place of its dead, though you cannot help but glance through the bars. Rows of stones tilt at awkward angles, their inscriptions faded to shadows. Some graves are adorned with small tokens, scraps of cloth tied to branches, or crude carvings left by children who play there by day. At night, it all feels transformed, no longer a place of memory, but a place of watching. The church doors themselves loom heavy, wood-scarred by centuries. You pause and place your palm against them, feeling the chill seep through. So many hands have touched these doors, each carrying hope or guilt or grief. Historians still argue whether such churches were truly centers of community life, or whether they were symbols imposed by distant powers. For you, the question is less important. What matters is that the building itself feels alive, its silence carrying weight enough to press on your shoulders. Your lantern glows against the carved figures on the door. A saint with hollow eyes stares down at you. The detail is worn, yet the face seems to shift with the light, almost as if judging. You step back and laugh softly at yourself. Imagination again, stirred by long hours and shadows. Yet you know that many in the town feel the same unease. By day, the church is a sanctuary. By night, it is a giant that sleeps but does not stop watching. The square beside the church is empty now. Only the faint rustle of leaves from a nearby tree breaks the stillness. You walk slowly round its trunk, your lantern beam sliding across its roots. At the base, you notice a small carving in the barker, heart pierced by an arrow, the initials nearly erased by time. Lovers marking their claim, perhaps years ago, now forgotten. These little signs remind you that beneath the solemn stone walls, life still insists on leaving traces of joy. The path curves past the sacristy windows, dark now, though once you saw candlelight burning late there. Priests do not always sleep when the town sleeps. Sometimes they keep their own vigils, writing letters or preparing sermons. Tonight, all is quiet. You step softly, though there is no one to disturb. Your breath forms faint clouds in the air, proof of the chill deepening with every passing hour. Beyond the church, the ground slopes down toward older houses. Here the streets are narrower still, barely more than alleys. The lantern's glow barely reaches the walls on either side. You slow your pace, not out of fear, but caution. The shadows here feel thicker, heavier. The sound of dripping water echoes from somewhere, perhaps a cracked pipe or a gutter left full. You follow the sound until it fades, your boots scraping gently on the stones. You stop at a small shrine built into a wall, a simple alcove holding a carved figure of a woman with folded hands. Someone has left flowers there, though they are wilted now. You bow your head slightly, a small gesture of respect, though your faith is not in the stone itself, but in the act of remembering. A quirky fact: in some towns, watchmen were expected to check shrines and holy places, not for devotion, but for vandalism. Even sacred spaces needed watching when shadows grew long. You continue on, your lantern hissing softly as the oil burns. A faint breeze stirs, tugging at your cloak, and you shift the strap across your shoulder. The church bell has fallen silent for now, leaving you alone with the sound of your own steps. Yet you do not feel entirely alone. The stones themselves feel like company, holding memories that press close around you. You recall a story once told about this very church. They say that in a storm long ago, lightning struck the tower and split the bell. The sound it made was so loud that windows shattered in nearby homes. Some believed it was a sign of divine anger. Others claimed it was a simple accident. Historians still argue whether the story was exaggerated to frighten people into piety, or whether it truly happened. What matters is that the tale is told again and again, shaping how the church is seen. You leave the churchyard behind at last, but its presence lingers like a weight on your back. The lantern's glow feels smaller now, the shadows larger. You take comfort in the rhythm of your steps, each tap of the staff a reassurance. The watch is not meant to be exciting. It is meant to be steady, unyielding, patient. As you turn down the next lane, you look back once more. The church tower rises against the sky, its silhouette cutting into the stars. For a moment it feels like the tower itself is keeping watch, as if your role is simply to echo its silent vigilance. You breathe deeply, steadying yourself, and move forward once more into the endless streets of the sleeping town. You step away from the looming shape of the church, and soon the rhythm of the town changes. Here the streets are quieter still, and the silence is filled not by human voices, but by the creatures that claim the night as their own. It begins with a dog barking far off, the sound carrying across rooftops before fading again into the dark. A cat darts across your path, its tail flicking like a whip before it melts into the shadows. Moments later, you hear the faint scurrying of tiny paws, rats slipping between barrels stacked along the wall of a baker's shop. The town belongs to them now. In daylight they scatter, wary of boots and brooms. But in these hours they move boldly, slipping along gutters, climbing fences, scavenging in every corner. Your lantern makes them pause, their eyes catching the glow and shining like polished coins. For a moment they hold your gaze, then vanish as quickly as they appeared. You smile faintly. They are thieves in their own right, though not the sort your staff is meant to chase away. The smell of animals drifts on the air. You catch the sharp tang of dung from a stable nearby, the musky odor of wet fur from dogs pacing behind fences, and the faint sourness of rats' trails along the walls. These scents are not unpleasant to you. They are part of the living town, proof that even while humans sleep, life stirs in countless other forms. A soft howl rises from beyond the walls, perhaps a stray dog or even a wolf in the woods outside. You pause, listening. The sound is distant, yet it tugs at something inside you. A reminder that the world beyond the town is larger, wilder, less forgiving. That is why the walls stand, and why men like you walk the streets. Historians still argue whether wolves truly lingered near towns in this era, or whether such tales were simply exaggerated fears. Whatever the truth, the sound in the distance feels real enough tonight. As you round a corner, a cluster of cats gathers near the refuse of the tavern. They hiss and swipe at one another over scraps, their eyes glowing like green lanterns in your light. One bold cat stares at you, unblinking, as if daring you to challenge its claim. You chuckle and move on. They will settle their quarrels without you. A quirky tidbit: in some towns, cats were both feared and revered, blamed for bad luck or cherished for their skill in hunting vermin. Their presence in the night was seen as a sign that spirits walked close, though no one could agree whether that was blessing or curse. You step into a broader lane where a row of workshops lines the street. Even in darkness, the smell of wood shavings, iron, and leather lingers. By day, these places are loud with hammers and saws, apprentices shouting orders back and forth. At night, they stand still, guarded by shutters and locks that are never as strong as their owners believe. You pause to check a door, rattling it lightly with your staff. The wood is firm, the lock intact. Satisfied, you move on, repeating the gesture at the next. This is part of your ritual, not truly necessary most nights, but a habit that reassures both you and the townsfolk. A sudden squeal breaks the silence as a rat tumbles from a barrel, startled by your presence. It scrambles across the stones, vanishing into a crack. You laugh softly under your breath. For all the fears of thieves and fires, more often than not, your companions are these skittering shapes, reminding you that the night is never truly empty. The lantern light flickers as oil burns low, and you pause to adjust the wick. The small flame steadies again, and you take a moment to watch the way it pushes back the darkness. It is a fragile barrier, and yet it feels powerful. Historians still argue whether the role of the night watch was more about practical safety or psychological comfort. Perhaps it was always both. The flame you carry is not only for seeing. It is for reminding others that someone is there. You walk on, and the sounds of animals follow you like a chorus. Dogs bark in succession as you pass their yards, announcing your presence as though you are the intruder. Chickens rustle in coops, disturbed by your footsteps. Even the horses shift in their stalls, hooves striking softly against wood. You glance through a gap in the stable door and see their eyes glimmer in your lantern light. They watch you calmly, their breath rising in faint clouds. At the edge of the street, you find a pile of grain sacks stacked against a wall. You tap them with your staff, listening for movement. Sure enough, a squeak comes from within, followed by the rustling of tiny bodies fleeing deeper into the stack. You shake your head. Tomorrow the miller will curse the rats again, as he does every week, and nothing will truly change. There is a kind of comfort in this repetition. Dogs will bark, cats will prowl, rats will scurry, and you will walk, lanterns swaying, staff tapping. The pattern is ancient, unchanging. You are not only guarding the town against dangers, you are witnessing its heartbeat, measured in paws, claws, and whiskers as much as in human voices. For a moment, you stop and simply listen. The night sings in its own way, not with instruments or voices, but with barks, hisses, squeaks, and rustles. It is a song you have come to know well, a reminder that even when the town sleeps, the world does not. You breathe deeply, nod once to yourself, and continue your slow patrol. The lantern you carry has begun to burn low, and you know the time has come to tend to it. This task is simple but essential. You find a place where the street widens, beside a barrel and a stone step, and you set your staff down gently. The lantern swings as you lift it carefully from its hook, the flame inside wobbling like a restless eye. You crouch low, shielding it with your cloak from the breeze, and prepare to give it new life. The oil flask at your belt is half full, its stopper worn smooth from constant use. You unfasten it, pour carefully into the small opening, and watch as the dark liquid glistens in the glow. A faint smell rises, sharp and oily, familiar as breath itself to you. The flame steadies, then flares brighter for a moment, casting stronger shadows across the walls. You trim the wick with a small iron hook, scraping away the char so the light will not sputter. These gestures are quiet, practiced, almost like prayer. Without them, the town would fall into deeper darkness than anyone could bear. Historians still argue whether night watchmen always carried lanterns, or if some relied solely on moonlight. Records are contradictory, and some scholars insist that lanterns would have made men too visible, vulnerable to attack. Yet, the stories that survived, the ones that people repeated, are nearly always about the glow of a watchman's lamp moving steadily down the street. The truth may be blurred, but the image has endured. As you rise, lantern restored, you take in the sight of its glow against the stones. It feels like a small victory, a fragile defiance against the vast dark that surrounds you. It is easy to forget how total the night can be until you imagine it without that small circle of light. A quirky fact comes to mind. In some towns, families would pay the watchman to tap on their shutters and remind them to snuff their own candles. a way of preventing fires. Imagine pacing through the lanes, knocking at windows to say, "Put out your light," a curious role for the one carrying the only flame still burning. The streets you walk now are narrower, twisted in odd angles as though the town grew here without plan. The lantern's glow spills unevenly, lighting one wall but leaving the opposite in shadow. You turn your head often, alert not because you expect danger, but because darkness plays tricks on the eyes. A barrel looks like a crouching figure. A bundle of sticks resembles a child bent in the corner. You know these illusions, yet you still feel your body tense before your mind corrects itself. Your staff taps steadily. With every few steps, you lift the lantern higher, letting its light spill over doorways and shutters. You know the people inside trust that sound. They may not see you, but they hear the rhythm of wood against stone, and it tells them all is well. It is a small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. At one corner you stop to adjust a loose shutter. The wind has pulled it open, and it slams faintly with every gust. Left alone, it could break or cause panic if mistaken for someone trying to enter. You secure it with a bit of cord, then stand back, satisfied. Such small acts go unnoticed in daylight, but they matter. A town is kept safe not only by force, but by these invisible labors. The lantern light gleams on a puddle near the gutter. You crouch and see your reflection rippling faintly. For a moment you feel as though another watchman is staring back at you from the water, walking the same streets in a mirror town. You shake the thought away, though it lingers. Loneliness sharpens imagination, and you have learned to let such images pass without dwelling too long. The oil in the lantern burns clean now, its flame steady and bright. You swing it slowly as you walk, watching the light chase shadows along the walls. The town feels quieter here, as if holding its breath. You imagine the people sleeping inside their houses, trusting that someone remains awake for them. That trust is a heavy thing, but also a kind one. It gives purpose to each step you take. At another corner, you pause to lean your staff against the wall and rub your hands together. The metal rim of the lantern has left your fingers warm and oily, and the night air quickly cools them again. You blow on your palms, flexing your fingers before gripping the staff once more. Even the smallest comforts a stretch. A sip of water from the flask at your side become rituals in the long hours. Above, the stars are veiled by a drifting cloud. The sky seems darker, heavier, as if pressing closer to the earth. The lantern's glow grows more precious under that deepening sky. You look up and imagine for a moment what it would be like if the flame went out, leaving you with nothing but that blank, dark. It is a sobering thought, one that makes you check the wick again, though you know it is steady. You resume your patrol, the lantern swinging in calm arcs. Every house, every shutter, every barrel is touched briefly by its glow. You know the night will demand this task again and again, tending the light, feeding it, protecting it. The work is repetitive, but repetition is the heart of the watch. Without it, there is only silence and uncertainty. You lift the lantern higher, and the shadows shrink back. For now, the town remains held in the circle of your light. The night deepens, and the sound that anchors it rises above all others, the clock tower. You hear its slow strike, a heavy toll that rolls across the rooftops and lingers in the still air like ripples in water. You stop where you stand and listen, counting carefully. 1, 2, 3. Each note a deep bronze voice that seems older than the town itself. The tower is the heart of the town's sense of time. Even while everyone sleeps, it continues, unmoved by dreams or silence. The bell's voice is your companion, marking the hours so you do not lose yourself in endless wandering. Historians still argue whether medieval clocks were truly reliable or if they often drifted, forcing men to reset them by the sun each day. Whatever the case, in this town the people trust the tower, and so do you. You walk toward it, drawn as much by ritual as by duty. The lantern swings, and the shadows bend around you until the tower rises tall above the rooftops. Its stonework is old, patched in places where storms cracked it, but still firm. The windows near its top gleam faintly as if they hold a watchful eye of their own. You pause at its base, setting your staff down and tilting your head back to see the height stretch into the sky. The clock face is pale in the lantern glow, its hands stiff against the black circle. You imagine the gears grinding slowly within, each tooth catching, each wheel turning. Men with soot on their fingers tended by day, winding its ropes and checking its bells. But at night it is yours. You are the only one to stand here, listening to its voice alone. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. In some towns, night watchmen themselves were tasked with striking bells on schedule. They carried sandglasses to measure the hours, turning them carefully in the dark. Imagine the pressure of knowing an entire town's time rested on whether you remembered to flip a glass. You are grateful that here the tower speaks for itself. The square around the tower is wide and empty now. By day it bustles with merchants calling prices, carts rattling, and townsfolk hurrying across. Tonight only the faint sound of the bell remains, fading slowly into silence. You let your steps echo, enjoying the hollow boom that the stones return. It feels like walking inside the body of a drum. You circle the base, lantern held high. The stones are cool, worn smooth where countless hands have leaned in prayer or curiosity. You notice a small carving low on the wall, a child's mark, perhaps, scratched with a nail or a knife. It is a crude face, 2 dots for eyes and a crooked line for a mouth. You smile faintly, imagining the child who once hid here, laughing at the mischief. That mark will outlast its maker, a secret signature tucked into the town's memory. Your staff taps against the stones as you lean on it. For a moment you rest, breathing slow, letting the tower loom above you. The flame in your lantern hisses softly, the sound almost blending with the faint grinding of the clock's hidden wheels. You think about how time itself can feel different at night. By day, an hour passes quickly, filled with work and talk. At night, it stretches, each moment slow and heavy. The tower does not care. Its wheels turn at the same pace, no matter how long the hours feel to you. The bell begins again. This time, a smaller chime that marks the quarter hour. The sound is lighter but still firm, a reminder that even the smallest fragments of time are counted. You glance up, nodding, as if to thank the tower for its company. You begin your walk again, but the tower lingers in your thoughts. It is not only a machine, it is a presence, one that steadies you when the night threatens to blur. Historians still argue whether such towers were built for practical reasons or for power. Symbols of authority as much as instruments of time. Perhaps both are true. For you, standing here in the night, it is simply a companion, a voice that speaks through the silence. As you leave the square, the sound of the last toll still hums faintly in your ears. You feel its rhythm guide your steps, each tap of your staff falling in time with the imagined echo. The night stretches ahead, but you walk with the certainty that every hour will be marked, every silence broken by that bronze voice. Your lantern swings again, its glow small compared to the tower's height. Yet the two together light and sound form the skeleton of your watch. One keeps the darkness at bay, the other keeps time itself from slipping away. Between them, you find balance, moving forward into the deeper hours of the night. You leave the tower behind, its slow voice still echoing faintly in your ears, and the night folds around you once again. The streets are emptier now, as if even the walls themselves have settled into slumber. With fewer sounds to distract you, your own thoughts begin to fill the silence. The hours stretch long, and solitude stirs memories, questions, and the strange weaving of imagination. The staff taps rhythmically, and the lantern's glow bobs ahead of you. Your mind drifts backward to your first nights on watch. You recall the nervous energy, the way every shadow seemed a lurking figure, every creak a threat. Over time, fear faded into familiarity. Now you walk as though the streets themselves are old friends, each corner and stone known by heart. Yet the mind does not stay idle. It fills the gaps with stories, and tonight it is no different. You glance up at a shuttered house and imagine the family within. Perhaps a merchant lies awake, counting coins under his breath, fearful that his trade will not survive the next season. Perhaps a child dreams of climbing the hills outside town, where wildflowers bloom in summer. Perhaps an elderly woman stirs, muttering a prayer to unseen saints. You will never know their truths, yet in your imagination you can weave them, stitching fragments of life into the silence. Historians still argue whether night watchmen were considered trustworthy sources when they described what they saw. Some chronicles hint that watchmen exaggerated, adding detail to impress their masters. Others suggest their records are among the most honest accounts of daily life, because who else walked every lane at every hour? Your own thoughts drift between fact and invention, so easily that you wonder whether any line truly exists. The lantern casts shadows that seem to move, and your mind plays tricks again. You see shapes in the dark that vanish as you step closer. A cloak becomes a hanging cloth. A crouched figure becomes a pile of logs. You laugh softly, knowing the night invents its own company when none is offered. This invention is not new, a quirky tidbit in many towns. Watchmen reported seeing ghostly lights drifting through the streets. which later scholars argued were simply marsh gases or the glow of insects. Whether truth or imagination, such tales became part of local legend. You pause near the market stalls, now deserted. By day, this place is a storm of haggling and shouting. Tonight, it feels like a stage left empty, the props still standing. You imagine the stalls waking, the wooden planks creaking like voices. You picture the echoes of sellers calling, coins clinking, children weaving between tables. The square holds those memories like a second skin, and you walk among them as if through a dream. The clock tower tolls faintly again, marking another hour. You stop and listen. How many times has that bell rung over the years? How many nights have been counted in its voice? The question leads you deeper into thought. You imagine the generations before you, other watchmen with lanterns swinging, boots tapping. Did they think the same thoughts, wonder the same questions, invent the same stories in the silence? Or did their minds drift elsewhere entirely? You lean on your staff and allow your imagination to wander further. What if the town itself is alive? Each shutter an eyelid, each lane a vein, each square a beating heart. The silence you hear is not emptiness but breathing. You picture the streets shifting slowly while no one watches, houses leaning closer together, doors sighing softly. It is a strange thought, yet not unwelcome. Better to imagine the town as living than to feel it as empty stone. The lantern's flame flickers, and you trim the wick quickly. Its steady glow returns, reassuring you. In its light, you notice carvings scratched into a stall, initials looped together with a heart. You smile, recalling the lover's mark you saw near the church. These symbols are everywhere, scattered through the town like tiny voices whispering. We were here, we loved, we lived. Perhaps that is all people ever truly want to leave behind. You begin walking again, and your mind drifts further into memory. You recall your own childhood, racing through these very lanes in daylight, daring friends to sneak into cellars or climb walls. The town felt larger then, endless. Now, after years of pacing it each night, you know every turn, every shadow, yet familiarity does not erase mystery. Each step holds both memory and possibility, both past and present. A cool wind brushes against you, and you shiver lightly. The air carries scents from the river damp reeds, fish, the faint sharpness of tar from boats moored along its edge. You are not yet at the river, but already its breath reaches you. You pause to listen, and you hear water lapping faintly in the distance. It blends with your thoughts, adding another layer to the quiet song of the night. You return to the square and let your mind rest for a moment. You tilt your head back and look at the stars. They seem sharper now, as if the clouds from earlier have cleared. You trace shapes, connecting dots into animals and heroes. The same constellations told in stories since long before this town was built. Perhaps other watchmen, centuries ago, tilted their heads in the same way, imagining the same figures above. The thought comforts you, linking your lonely vigil to a chain of countless others. The lantern swings as you resume your path. Memory, imagination, history, and legend blur together, as they always do on these long watches. You walk not only through streets of stone, but also through streets of thought, each step carrying you deeper into both. The night feels thicker now, as if the silence itself has weight. You walk slowly toward the grain market, your lantern's glow spilling over stacked barrels and wooden stalls that stand abandoned until morning. The smell of husks and dust lingers in the air, faint but earthy, as though the harvest still clings to the wood. In daylight, this place bursts with noise, farmers shouting prices, buyers fingering the grain to judge its quality, carts rattling over stones. At this hour, it is emptied of voices, and every creak or rustle seems larger than it should be. Then you hear it. A sudden clatter breaks the stillness. The sound is sharp, metal against wood, echoing like a hammer striking a hollow drum. You freeze, lantern held higher, eyes narrowing. The staff feels heavier in your grip. You wait, listening. Nothing follows at first. Only the drip of water from a roof gutter and the faint squeak of wood settling. You take a step forward, slow and careful, boots scraping against the cobblestones. Historians still argue whether watchmen were truly expected to confront danger directly, or if their main role was simply to raise alarm for others to act. The truth may lie somewhere in between. Tonight you must at least look, because the sound does not explain itself. You move toward the stalls, lantern swaying, shadows stretching tall across the walls. The air here smells of grain, dry and sharp. You brush past a sack that leans against a post. Dust rises into the light, tiny motes swirling like golden sparks. You hear another faint noise, softer this time, a shuffle, a speeder. You lift the lantern higher, its glow spilling over stacked crates. Something small darts away, too quick to follow. You exhale, a short laugh. A rat, perhaps larger than usual, knocking something loose. The market is full of them. Still, the unease lingers. You tap your staff against a barrel, listening to the hollow sound. Another shuffle answers from the shadows, and a cat appears, eyes glowing green. It stares at you for a moment, then leaps lightly onto a beam and disappears. You shake your head, relief mingling with amusement. A sudden noise, and it was only creatures again. The town may sleep, but its animals are restless companions. Yet you cannot shake the thought of how icily the mind leaps to danger. In the silence, every clatter feels like an intruder. In truth, thieves rarely come here. Grain is bulky, hard to carry unnoticed, but stories of theft linger, told by merchants who swear someone is stealing handfuls each night. A quirky tidbit. In some towns, it was said that thieves trained dogs, or even tame monkeys, to sneak into markets and carry off small goods. Whether true or not, such tales filled the nights with suspicion. You continue checking the stalls, lantern brushing across carved wood, iron hinges, and rope ties. All seems secure. A sack bulges where it leans, and you press it lightly with your staff. Firm, no sign of tampering. You circle a cart left under a tarp, lifting the cloth to peer inside. Only grain, neatly packed. Nothing more. The clatter was only chance, an accident of creatures or wood. Still, you are glad you came. The watch is not about what you find, but about what you confirm is not there. As you step back into the square, the silence feels heavier than before. The grain market seems to hold its breath, as if waiting for you to leave. You pause at its edge, lantern raised, and give the stalls one last long look. Everything is still. Only the soft scratching of mice remains hidden in the shadows. You nod once to yourself, satisfied, and turn away. The clock tower strikes again, faint in the distance. You count the strokes, steady and deliberate. Another hour has passed. You exhale slowly, shoulders easing. The sound grounds you, pulling you back from imagination's grasp. Historians still argue whether the tolling of hours helped people feel safer at night, or if it only reminded them of how slowly time moved. For you, it is both. You walk away from the market, the lanterns glow, shrinking the stalls behind you until they vanish into shadow. Your staff taps once more in rhythm, carrying you back into the deeper lanes. Whatever the clatter was, the night has claimed it now, leaving you with nothing but the sound of your own steps and the steady flame in your hand. You leave the grain market behind, its shadows still clinging faintly in your mind, and make your way toward the central square. At the very heart of the town lies the old stone well, the kind of structure that seems eternal, as though it has always been there and always will be. The lantern's glow reaches it slowly, first catching the curve of its worn stones, then the wooden beam stretched across the top, then finally the rope hanging slack, a bucket resting against the side. The square is silent, but the well itself feels alive. You step closer, staff tapping gently against the stones, and set the lantern on the edge. Its light pools across the circular mouth, revealing water far below that glimmers faintly in the glow. The air here is cooler, rising damp from the depths, carrying a smell of earth and minerals. You lean over slightly, listening. The faintest echo answers, as though the well breathes back. Historians still argue whether towns were truly built around wells, or whether the wells were added after settlements grew. What is certain is that a well like this is more than a water source. It is the heart of daily life. By day, it is crowded with buckets clanking, voices overlapping, gossip spilling as easily as the water itself. By night, it becomes something else, as still, eyes staring upward from the earth. You glance at the stones around the well and notice scratches where countless ropes have rubbed against them. The grooves are deep, polished by centuries of lifting and lowering. You imagine all the hands that have pulled here, all the lives shaped by the simple act of drawing water. Even the poorest houses depend on it, for thirst does not care about wealth. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. In some towns, people whispered that wells were portals to other realms, that spirits lingered in the water, watching those who peered too long. Children dared one another to lean over and shout their names, listening for an echo that might sound slightly wrong. You glance down again, and for a moment you almost imagine the reflection of your lantern is another lantern, burning in another world. You straighten quickly, smiling at your own foolishness. You circle the well, checking the wooden supports. One beam creaks under your hand, though it still holds firm. The bucket is worn, iron rim rusted, but solid enough. You run your hand along the rope, feeling its rough texture, stiff with water stains. Tomorrow morning it will serve again, as it always does. Tonight it is simply a reminder of continuity, the lifeblood of the town waiting in silence. The square itself is quiet, but you imagine its daytime bustle. Women balancing buckets on their hips, children splashing one another with handfuls of water, men pausing to trade news while they rest from lifting. Arguments, laughter, bargains, all of it woven into the stones under your boots. Now only your steps sound here, a faint, hollow echo that fades into stillness. You pause on the far side of the well, letting your lantern shine across the square. The shadows stretch long, bending away from the light. You tilt your head back and see the stars above, scattered like dust across the dark. For a moment you imagine that the well is a mirror of the sky, a circle of black holding hidden stars in its depths. The thought makes you shiver lightly, though you smile. Imagination is both curse and comfort during these long hours. Stories of the well stir in your memory. Some say it is blessed, that prayers whispered into it carry deeper than any church. Others claim it is cursed, that those who lean too far risk being pulled by unseen hands. Historians still argue whether such tales were born from superstition or whether they masked real dangers children lost to accidents. Tragedies woven into legend. Whatever the truth, you know the well is more than stone and water. It is a vessel of memory, holding centuries of voices in its dark throat. You lift your lantern again and take one last look into its depths. The water glimmers faintly, unmoving. You nod to it, as if to an old companion, then turn away. The staff taps again, steady and sure, carrying you back into the lanes. Behind you, the well sits in silence once more, patient and eternal. The hours lengthen now. You feel them in your bones, not only as time marked by the bell, but as weight pressing gently upon your shoulders. Each step seems slower, heavier, though your body continues out of habit. This is the heart of the Watch the Stretch, when the world is deeply asleep, when the town is most silent, when solitude becomes less a condition and more a presence that walks beside you. Your lantern glows steadily, but its light feels smaller in the widening dark. You keep your staff tapping the cobblestones in rhythm, the sound almost like a heartbeat. You imagine the people sleeping inside their houses, unaware of you, dreaming in warmth while you walk in chill. Yet you also imagine their trust, that unspoken assurance that someone is awake for them. That thought steadies you. The stillness grows thicker. Even the animals are quiet now. Dogs that barked earlier lie curled in their yards. Cats vanish into rooftops without a sound. Rats keep to their holes. The town feels emptied, though you know it is full of life behind shutters and doors. It is in these hours that loneliness becomes sharper, not because you are alone, but because the silence is absolute. Historians still argue whether watchmen suffered more from boredom or fear. Records show men dismissed for sleeping on their rounds, yet others tell of watchmen who claimed they heard voices calling from the shadows. The truth may be both. The mind grows restless when given nothing but darkness. You are no exception. You find yourself pausing to listen to things that may not be there. A faint scrape, a whisper that could be wind, a shadow that seems to move. You reach a small bench under a tree, one of the few places in the town where a man might rest for a moment. You lower yourself carefully, setting the lantern beside you, the flame glowing on the roots. You do not close your eyes. Duty will not allow it, but you breathe deeply and let the stillness soak into you. The wooden bench creaks softly under your weight, a sound that is almost companionable. From here, you look at the houses around you. Their windows are dark, their doors closed. You think of the people inside, the baker, the tailor, the mason, the widow who sells herbs. By day, you greet them, exchange words, share the rhythm of the town. By night, you become their unseen protector, and they become dreams you can only imagine. You create stories for them in your mind, letting each house contain a world. A quirky tidbit drifts to you. In some towns, watchmen were expected to sing or call out hourly, not just to mark the time, but to prove they were awake. Imagine pacing the streets, shouting verses into the dark while people tried to sleep. Perhaps it kept the watchman from dozing. Perhaps it drove the townsfolk mad. Either way, you are glad your watch is silent. You rise from the bench and take up your lantern again. The staff resumes its tapping, and you feel the rhythm pull you forward. The lanes seem longer now, stretching like ribbons with no end. Time itself feels slower, each minute lingering. You pass the same corners, the same shutters, yet they feel changed, as though the silence has thickened them. You glance into an alley and see nothing but dark. Still, your mind shapes it into something else. A cloaked figure, a watcher in shadow. You take a step closer, raise your lantern, and reveal only stacked firewood. You chuckle quietly at yourself, though the echo of the imagined figure stays. You know this is what the night does. It takes absence and fills it with invention. The clock tower tolls again. The sound is heavier now, slower in your ears, as if it too feels the burden of these deep hours. You count the strokes, grounding yourself. Another hour done. The night continues. You breathe slowly, letting the sound wash over you. You continue your patrol, but your thoughts drift more easily now. Memories rise, unbidden faces from years ago, voices long gone, moments that return without warning. The silence makes them vivid, as though the past is walking beside you. You think of your father's voice, your mother's smile, a childhood friend who once ran with you through these same streets. The town holds them all, and in the stillness you can almost hear them again. You realize this is part of the watch, to not only guarding against danger, but carrying memory. You are the only one awake to hold the town's past and present together in these hours. It is a lonely task, but not without meaning. You lift your lantern higher, and the flame shines steady, a small defiance against both shadow and solitude. The air has grown cooler, carrying with it a faint whistle that winds between the shuttered houses. You walk slowly now, lantern swaying, staff tapping in rhythm. Each sound you make is answered by another sound carried on the wind. A loose shutter creaks softly, as though whispering a secret. A doorframe groans, wood shifting against iron. The town feels restless, though you know it sleeps. You pause at the mouth of a narrow alley. The lantern's glow does not reach far here, so the darkness within seems almost alive. The wind slides through it, rustling straw, stirring scraps of cloth. You listen, and for a moment it feels like voices drift on the air. Not words you can understand, but murmurs, like a gathering just out of sight. You step closer, raise the lantern, and see only shadows stretching along stone. The whisper fades, replaced by silence. You smile faintly at yourself. The night teaches you to hear things that are not there. Historians still argue whether watchmen truly believed in the spirits they sometimes claimed to encounter, or whether they told such tales to make their long hours seem braver. Either way, records of whispers, shapes, and strange lights fill the margins of their accounts. Tonight you understand why. Solitude shapes sound into speech, and shadow into form. You walk on, the lantern brushing light across shutters. A few are marked with chalk symbols, protective signs drawn hastily by hands worried about plague or bad fortune. You run your fingers over one as you pass, feeling the powder crumble slightly. Such marks fade quickly, but their meaning lingers, carried by belief more than by chalk. The wind carries scents now, too smoke from a dying fire, damp from a nearby well, and something faintly metallic, perhaps iron left in the cold. You breathe deeply, letting each scent root you in the moment. Sensations anchor you when imagination wanders too far. At a corner, a loose sheet of parchment lifts from the ground, carried by the breeze until it sticks against your boot. You stoop, pick it up, and hold it in the lantern's glow. The writing is blurred, ink washed by damp, perhaps a notice from the council, perhaps a page from a book. Whatever it once said, it is now unreadable. You fold it carefully and place it aside, more from habit than necessity. Even scraps have stories. You continue, and the alleys seem to speak again. A shutter bangs once, sharp against the silence. You lift your staff, more out of instinct than fear, then lower it again, only the wind. Yet the sound lingers in your ears, as if it carried intent. You glance back once before moving on. A quirky tidbit drifts to mind. In some towns, watchmen believed that certain winds carried messages from distant places. A southern wind meant news of war. A northern wind foretold sickness. Most scholars dismiss this as superstition, but the idea lingers, because the night makes wind feel purposeful. Tonight it seems to carry words just out of reach. You step into a broader street, where the wind runs freer. It pushes at your cloak, makes the lantern flame bend. You shield it with your hand, trimming the wick slightly so it does not sputter. The small act steadies you. The lantern glows firm again, its light cutting through the restless air. You pause beneath an overhanging roof, letting the wind rush past you. From here, you listen. The sounds it carries are layered. Shutters rattling, leaves scraping, rope creaking on a pulley. They blend into something like a voice, low and drawn out, almost chanting. You know it is only coincidence, yet you cannot help hearing meaning. You whisper softly to yourself, a simple reassurance. All is well. The clock tower tolls faintly, its sound stretched thin by the breeze. You count the strokes, grounding yourself once more. Another hour has passed. The night feels endless, yet the bell reminds you it is measured, each moment contained. You lift your lantern higher, step back into the wind, and let it guide you down the lane. You move slowly, deliberately, listening to the whispers the wind carries, knowing they are only draughts and wood, but allowing them to feel like company. The town itself seems to breathe around you, and for a moment, solitude feels less heavy. The night has stretched long, but now the air carries the faintest change. You notice it first, not with your eyes, but with your skin. The chill is softer, less biting. The wind feels lighter, as though it no longer carries the weight of endless darkness. You lift your lantern higher and see that the black sky has paled ever so slightly, a thin wash of grey brushing its edge. It is not yet dawn, but the first hints of it are pushing at the horizon. You pause in the middle of the lane, staff resting against your shoulder. The town remains asleep, its shutters closed, its doors barred. Yet something shifts in the silence. It is no longer the silence of deep night, but of anticipation, as though every house knows the world is about to wake. The stillness carries a different weight now, one that feels almost fragile. You walk slowly toward the outer edge of the town, where the wall rises against the fields. From here you can look beyond the houses and see the land stretching away, faint shapes of trees against the paling sky. The horizon holds a faint silver line, so thin it might be imagined. You know it is real. This is the hour when your watch nears its end, when relief and melancholy mix in equal measure. Historians still argue whether watchmen truly cared about the coming of dawn, or whether they dreaded it, knowing their duties were often thankless. Records suggest some felt pride, others only exhaustion. For you, the feeling is complicated. You welcome the end, yet you know the silence of the night is yours alone, and once the sun rises, it will vanish. You lean against the wall for a moment, lantern held close. Its flame glows steady, but it feels smaller now, less necessary. Soon the sun will banish shadows more completely than any lantern could. You run your hand along the rough stone, feeling the cold grit. The wall has held the town safe for centuries, though by daylight its cracks and repairs will show. At night it feels like a firm line between safety and wilderness. A quirky tidbit drifts into your thoughts. In some towns, it was believed that spirits could not pass the walls after dawn. They retreated with the night, banished by sunlight. Whether true or not, the belief gave comfort. You imagine them now, whispering back into the dark, leaving the town empty of their presence until another evening comes. You turn from the wall and make your way back through the lanes. The light has changed subtly. The stars are fading, their sharpness softening. The black sky has become a deep blue, and the edges of rooftops are more visible. You notice details you had not seen all night: cracks in plaster, cobwebs along shutters, the faint sheen of dew forming on wood. You pass the square again, and the well looks different now. Its surface gleams with a paler light, reflecting the sky instead of only your lantern. You pause to look, and the water seems calmer, less like an open mouth and more like a mirror. You smile faintly. Even the well seems to know that dawn approaches. The clock tower tolls again, its voice deep but not as heavy as before. You count the strokes, realizing how close the night is to ending. The sound rolls across the town, steady and slow, but instead of pressing upon you, it feels like release. The hours are still long, but the weight is lifting. You walk on, lantern swaying, staff tapping lightly. The town feels different under this early light, as if it is stretching in its sleep. Curtains stir faintly at one window, though no one appears. A rooster crows from beyond the walls, its call sharp in the stillness. Another answers from farther off. Soon the chorus will spread, filling the air with life. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs with the cool air. It tastes cleaner somehow, as if the night has been washed away. You know that in minutes, fires will be lit in hearths, smoke will rise from chimneys, and doors will open. But for now, it is still your watch. You savor these last moments of quiet ownership before the day takes the town back. The horizon glows a faint gold now, enough to brush color onto the edges of the rooftops. You tilt your head back and watch as the stars vanish, one by one, their light swallowed by morning. The lantern in your hand feels unnecessary, but you keep it lit. Its flame is a symbol, and your duty is not over yet. You continue through the lanes, moving slower now, not out of weariness, but because you know the end is near. Each corner, each square, each shutter feels like a farewell. The night is leaving, and with it goes the peculiar solitude that belongs only to the watchman. The last hour of your watch arrives gently, not with a sudden shift, but with a gradual unfolding. The town remains quiet, yet you feel the difference in every step. The darkness that pressed so firmly upon you through the night is thinner now, softened by the slow light creeping across the horizon. The lantern in your hand glows less brightly against the greying sky, its flame no longer the only beacon. You carry it still, because duty requires it, but also because it feels wrong to let it die before the bell announces your release. You walk through the lanes once more, checking corners you have already passed a dozen times. Each shutter, each door, each stack of wood or barrel receives your glance, though you know they have not moved since your last patrol. Repetition is the heart of the watch. The act of checking again is what gives it meaning. You pause at a shutter that hangs slightly loose, tugging it closed so it will not rattle when the wind rises later. No one will know you did this, yet you feel a quiet satisfaction. The smell of smoke touches your nose before you see its source. Somewhere ahead, someone has risen early, stirring embers to light a fire for bread or broth. The scent curls into the air, warm and sharp, a herald of the day. You listen, and faint sounds follow wood shifting in a hearth, a pot being set onto stone, the muted clink of a spoon. You smile softly. The town is beginning to stir, though only in whispers. You cross the square, and the well reflects the paling sky. Its water no longer looks deep and secret, but simple and useful, ready to be drawn by the first women with buckets. You lean briefly on your staff and let the lantern's glow shimmer across the surface one last time. Soon it will hold daylight instead of your flame. You nod as though bidding farewell to an old companion, then move on. Historians still argue whether night watchmen felt pride in their duty or only relief when dawn arrived. Some accounts describe men boasting of their vigilance, while others mention nothing but fatigue. You feel both: pride because you have walked each lane faithfully, and relief because the weight of the dark is lifting. Pride and relief are not enemies, they walk together at dawn. A rooster crows again, closer now. Its call is loud, confident, a voice that belongs to daylight. More follow, a ragged chorus echoing from yards and farms. Dogs bark, not the weary bark of night, but the eager bark of animals ready for morning. The sounds layer upon one another, and the silence that reigned for hours begins to crumble. You take comfort in it, even as you feel the solitude slipping away. The clock tower tolls once more, its deep bronze voice filling the town. You count the strokes and know that your watch is finished. The bells are no longer heavy, no longer a burden. They are release. You stand for a moment, letting the sound vibrate through your chest, and then you lower your staff slightly. Your duty has ended. You make your way back to the guard post at the edge of the square. The lantern flame wavers, tiny now against the growing light of dawn. You unhook it, set it carefully onto the post's table, and watch as it continues to burn. Someone else will snuff it, someone preparing for the day, but it is no longer yours to tend. You rest your staff against the wall, the familiar weight slipping from your hand. The release feels strange, as though you have set down a part of yourself. The town wakes slowly. You hear doors opening, shutters being pushed wide, voices murmuring greetings. Smoke thickens from chimneys, and the air carries the smell of baking bread. The cobblestones that echoed only your steps now hold the tread of many feet. The solitude of the night dissolves into the bustle of morning, and with it your place fades. You stand for a moment longer, watching as the first rays of sunlight strike the rooftops. Gold spreads across the tiles, washing away the last of the night's shadows. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs with the clean morning air, and feel the tension of the long hours ease from your shoulders. Your work is done. The town is awake. You step aside into anonymity once more, letting daylight take the streets you guarded in silence. The cycle will begin again tonight, but for now, your watch is complete. Now the night has passed, and the weight of hours has lifted. The lantern has been set aside, its flame flickering smaller, no longer needed. The bells have spoken, steady and final, releasing the town from sleep and releasing you from watch. The cobblestones that echoed only your footsteps now wait for the clatter of carts, for the chatter of children, for the sound of voices rising together in the daylight. As you step back from your post, the world begins to soften. The rooftops glow with morning light, pale at first, then slowly filling with gold. Shadows retreat into corners, and the shapes that felt heavy with mystery now appear simple, ordinary, familiar. The silence of the night dissolves into gentle sound, the rustle of curtains opening, the quiet laughter of a family beginning the day, the call of birds stretching their wings. You feel the tension of hours unwind, each step lighter as you move away from the empty lanes and into the comfort of rest. The rhythm of your staff fades from your ears, replaced by the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Inhale, exhale, a softer music now than any bell or chime. Let yourself rest with the town. Let the stillness of the night, the careful watch, and the patient hours drift away. The burdens are set down, the duty fulfilled, the dark kept at bay. The lantern burns no longer for you. It is time to close your eyes. Imagine the streets fading gently into mist, the rooftops dissolving into a soft horizon, the tower and its bell retreating into distance. What remains is calm, simple, quiet. The watch has ended. The night is safe. You can rest.